Excuse me, do you by any chance have a message for me, Strether? Lambert Strether?
Strether? 1 moment, sir.
It's from a Mr. Waymarsh. He was to have met me this morning in Liverpool, or failing that, here in Chester.
No, sir, I'm afraid there's nothing.
Forgive me, I couldn't help overhearing you.
Oh, I am sorry.
It's not Mr. Waymarsh of Woollet, Massachusetts you were speaking of just now?
Why, yes, indeed. My lawyer friend is supposed to be meeting me here. Do you know him?
Well, I have met him on several occasions back home. He wouldn't remember me, I dare say.
Oh, but I'm sure.
Hadn't you better look up my name?
Your name?
In the register.
Well, and let that exalted young woman know we'd struck up an acquaintance?
Oh, well, if you're squeamish.
Why, have you looked up mine?
Of course, that's what I was doing just now. However, if you prefer it, here is my card. Study it a moment while I speak to our superior young friend. Excuse me, is there perhaps anywhere one may sit?
Well, there's the garden, madam. Miss.
Oh, garden. Very well, that will do admirably. Mr. Strether, would you care to join me for a moment in the garden?
Oh, certainly, Miss Gostry.
Good. Excellent. Thank you so much. And now perhaps I may have it back, if you don't mind. My card.
Oh.
Thank you. I find one spends a fortune on them. And did you have a good trip, Mr. Strether?
Oh, dear. Is it so obvious, then, that I'm a new arrival? I'd rather hoped it wasn't.
I saw you this morning in Liverpool on the boat. I was meeting a friend. Will this do?
Quite splendidly.
I must say I like your name, Louis Lambert Strether. It has a fine ring to it.
It's from a novel by Balzac. The Louis Lambert part, I mean.
I know that.
It's a very bad novel, I'm afraid.
Oh, I know that, too.
You won't have heard of it otherwise, I'm sure. My name, I mean.
Oh, but I have. You edit a newspaper somewhere, a review.
In Woollet, Massachusetts.
You say that as though you wanted one immediately to know the worst.
No, it's merely that in case anything happens, I want to feel sure that I've been quite straight with you.
And what precisely do you think of as happening, Mr. Strether?
Oh, waiter, what does one usually drink on these occasions?
You really wish to do as the natives, not merely as they do in Woollet?
Oh, I do, most certainly I do.
Good. Donc. And I will have a rather dry sherry, please.
2 rather dry sherries, if you please, waiter.
Yes, sir.
Relax, Mr. Strether. You have the air of a man doing something he feels not quite right.
Indeed. Am I enjoying myself as obviously as that?
You're not enjoying yourself, I fear, as much as you should. The specter of Woollet, one feels, is looking over your shoulder.
Oh, yes, Woollet.
Dear old Woollet.
Thank you.
Too much.
But you see, Woollet is never sure that it ought to enjoy itself, but it hasn't got anyone to show it how, as I have.
You have indeed somebody. But I wish you really would let me show you how.
But you see, I'm afraid of you.
Nonsense. That may do for the ladies of Woollet. It won't do for me. You aren't in the least, or we shouldn't be here. I think, in fact, you trust me.
I do. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. I shouldn't. You see, all this Europe, everything, it's so new to me. Obscure provincial widower that I am.
I think, in fact, you recognize me for what I am, which is rather fine of you. And rare.
Do I? And what, pray, are you?
What am I? Well, as to my present occupation, I suppose one could say I am a general guide to Europe, a sort of unpaid courier cum maid, one might say. I wait for people, I take them about, and at the end send them home again. I know who is whom, where things may be found. I've never sought it. It has just become my fate, something one accepts. And you, what is your purpose in coming to Europe? You strike me as a man who always has one.
You're quite right. I suppose you could say that I've come to Europe on a mission.
A missionary, indeed. How interesting.
I prefer to think of myself as an ambassador with a somewhat delicate office to perform. I have come here at the request of my employer, Mrs. Newsom, whose son has been studying in Paris.
Mrs. Newsom of Woollet, Massachusetts.
This young man, her son, is wanted home with some urgency.
A widow. Upright, forthright, patroness of the arts.
Oh, you know her.
Not her exactly, just others of her kind. Continue.
Oh, for one moment, I think I see my friend Waymarsh in there.
And what if you do?
Oh, yes, what indeed.
Is your Mr. Waymarsh, then, the voice of Woollet, the conscience of Woollet, that you should feel in this way about it?
Look here, you must get me out of this. You must.
You mean out of meeting him?
No, I have to meet him. I want to meet him. No, out of this general terror. You put your finger on it just now. You see, I'm always concerned with something other than the thing of the moment.
Ah, yes.
Even as I sit here, my mind is elsewhere.
Well, it shouldn't be, Mr. Struthers.
Exactly, I admit it. That's why you must help me get me free of it.
Is that an order, that I should take the job on? You'd have to give yourself up to it.
That is the deuce of it, you see. I can't.
But at least you'd like to.
I would unspeakably.
Then that is enough. Trust me.
I do. I do.
No, Struther.